Former insurance commissioner, now Democratic State Party Chairman Wayne Goodwin is here. We talked to this guy, long-form conversation next. Wayne Goodwin's been in politics all his life, starting in his teenage years. He's been a state legislator. He worked for Jim Long of the insurance, the Department of Insurance, was Insurance Department Commissioner, State Commissioner. Now you run the Democratic Party as party chairman. Partially run it, I should say. Thank you, sir, for coming on.
It's my pleasure to join you.
We know you as insurance commissioner. How's the transition been from that role to running the other half, the other big party in North Carolina?
Well, it is still a work in progress. Between my years as assistant commissioner with Jim Long and then as commissioner, that was 12 years of my life. And I'm just now into starting my 6th or 7th week as the chairman of the State Democratic Party. So the transition is ongoing, but I'm looking forward to the challenge.
Let's go back in time to Jim Long's days when you worked for him. What was he like to work for, and what did he teach you?
Well, he was awesome, and he was truly a man of the people, and I don't think we'll see another person like him again, because he grew up in a family that believed in both public service and in our great state, and also in staying humble and close to his roots. I saw him as a political activist. I saw him as a legislator, and then had the great opportunity, the blessing to be an employee of his. He was always open-minded. He encouraged creativity, and if he didn't pick on you, if he didn't joke about you or whatever, then he didn't like you, and he liked everybody. So he was always having pranks and jokes. But we knew that when it came to protecting consumers and fighting for the lowest cost on insurance, he was a serious guy, and I learned a lot.
I remember when you were running for the office, he'd announced, he never said he was retiring. Didn't he show up as if he were going to file in court, and he goes, oops, I'm out?
Well, what happened is that he was planning to file, and he was had run for six times, and I believe he was running for a 7th term. And the day before, he called me and said, you know what, I don't think I'm going to do this. And I always thought he was joking. He had talked to everybody about he might not run again. Of course, he filed every 4 years. And I didn't really think he'd be serious about it, because his predecessor, the fellow he worked for, John Ingram, had actually told him that he wasn't running, and then he switched and filed anyway, and it was an interesting situation back then. But the day before he decided he didn't want to run, he said, get your papers together. So I scurried down to Richmond County, my home county, because you have to get things signed by your county board of elections. And then that morning, I said, are you sure? You sure? He said, yeah. So we filed.
What's changed in politics since even that was been 12 years ago?
Yes,
it's been that long ago now. I was just getting here then. What's different about being a Democrat now? He was a different breed, and now it seems like Democrats might be a little different. Is that right? Rural Democrat, urban Democrat?
Well, the parties, both of the major political parties have metamorphosed over the years. And I don't know, just in my short life, I've seen the epitaph for both of our political parties written at least 3 times. So things run in cycles, and I believe that as the pendulum swings, you want to do what's best for North Carolinians. And what we have seen is that we've seen a growth in technology. We've seen more people who are disaffected by the political system, so there's more unaffiliated voters. And there's also a tremendous number of young voters who are learning about public policy issues in myriad ways, and we just have to adapt to that. So being a Democrat, being someone who's active in politics, is more difficult and more challenging, but it's also even more exciting.
I don't think in a period of my life, and I wasn't around for the 60s with Richard Nixon and Lyndon Johnson and that, but I've never seen a time when half of this state hated Democrats and half hated Republicans. I mean, whose love is it? Are we down to libertarians? Or are we giving them a fair shake, at least on a personality level?
Well, I tell you, things have become hyper politicized, and I'm not going to cast aspersions, but it just seems like nationally, and even on the state level, and in some counties, it's just like there's this tug of war, this love-hate. There's one thing to be the loyal opposition, but it has gotten to be where politics is not civil. It used to be that members of Congress or members of the legislature who they do their battle on public policy issues. At the end of the day, they'd go work out in the gym, go have dinner, or go socialize with each other. But it just seems like folks have become not civil anymore, and I think that's not good for our society.
Did the election reforms and the reforms that came down here post Jim Black, Did those change the dynamic? I've heard ex-lawmakers say we used to at least be able to go get a steak dinner and not worry about going to jail over it. We could sit together as Republicans and Democrats, and we can't do that now.
Well, I'm all for good government, all for transparency, all for having strong ethics and the like. I do remember whenever, as I left the legislature and worked for Commissioner Long, that there was a proposal that kept us from receiving Christmas cards and bereavement cards, and that indicated that the pendulum had overcorrected, had swung too far. So there has to be an appropriate balance that protects the public interest and also ensures that we have folks who are doing what's good and best for our, for our community and for our state.
As a commissioner, as a legislator, so you've been at executive level, you've been,
Yeah.
How hard is it to keep your nose clean? And if you're going to break the law and you want to do it, you're going to do it. But how hard is it or easy is it to make a mistake that is illegal, but it doesn't feel illegal? You accepted the Christmas card or the bereavement card. You've broken a law. Is it easy to do that?
Well, I think that it's a question of intent, and also, people are not perfect, and people can make an errant mistake, and you work with the Board of Elections, you work with other officials, you get guidance. You just have to stay on top of this and know the law. And it used to be that legislators were their own treasurers. It used to be that statewide candidates were their own treasurers. You really can't do that anymore because there's so many more things that you have to be aware of. So I think that it really comes down to intent. Everybody's going to have a little slip up here and there where they forgot to sign something, they forgot to submit something, but there are others who are there to remind you. And of course, I always ask questions: have I submitted everything I need to submit? Have I gotten every sign off? It's really, I think, good to be over vigilant, just to make sure that you're doing the right thing.
Well, we've talked about all this past in these past 12 years, and for you to 30 years, I guess, in politics. Yeah. Now you're running, or you're a chairman of the Democratic Party and a face in that. Take that experience, apply it to 2017. What are you going to do for this Democratic Party?
Well, as I mentioned a moment ago, in my short life, I've seen the National Democratic Party and the state party on both sides have its epitaph written. And I think what that means is it gives us an opportunity after this most recent election to rebuild and to reconnect. We still have more registered Democratic voters in this state than any other political party, but there are a lot of folks who are unaffiliated, and there are a lot of folks who are disaffected or disconnected throughout the political system. So as the new chairman of the State Democratic Party, my job is a balancing act. I want to make sure that we address the needs and concerns of our urban areas as they grow and as they attract tremendous population from other states and other parts of the world, day in and day out. But also that we reconnect with communities like where I'm from rural North Carolina, where we've had tremendous challenges with infrastructure and recruiting jobs and helping to ensure that our public schools have the best tools and resources that they need, and having the health care they need for areas that are hard-pressed economically. So a lot of what I'm focused on is exactly with what Governor Cooper is focused on, that is to recruit jobs, to improve our schools, to help raise teacher pay, to seek the expansion of Medicaid and help our health delivery systems, and all those things that are good for North Carolina to help improve our name and improve our people.
If I ask a Republican sitting there next week about that, they're going to want to pay teachers more, they're going to recruit more jobs, they want to cut taxes, create a business-friendly climate. Only thing I heard different was Medicaid expansion. Right. You went there on that, and President Trump says enough of that if we get this Trump care through. I guess we can call it that now.
Sure.
How do you handle Medicaid, whether or not, it's a state issue for us. How do you handle it with the uncertainty on Capitol Hill?
Well, insurance in general is a complicated issue. Health insurance is the most complicated of issues because you've got so many dynamics. Unlike other types of insurance, and as a former insurance commissioner, I talk about this, unlike other types of insurance where you use it on occasion, health insurance we rely upon regularly. And there's a lot of calculations that go into that. When we talk about Medicaid expansion, and particularly with our populations that have not had health insurance, and especially our rural communities where our rural hospitals rely upon on Medicaid and other types of reimbursements to keep their doors open. If we don't have Medicaid expansion or reforms that help address the needs that rural communities have, you'll see access to health care plummet, and you'll see doctors' offices close, which then affects the health delivery systems in other parts of the state, because then folks will have to travel long distances to get health care.
But Medicaid expansion may be off the table soon. Why keep pushing? Why not wait?
Well, I think it's still an open issue because we do have Republicans, U.S. senators and Republican members of Congress in states that agreed to expand Medicaid with Republican governors who are pushing back hard. And that's why we haven't seen Trump care passed yet. It's still an open debate, and I don't think we're going to see it resolved anytime soon.
As an insurance guy, old commissioner, why is it we Americans, conservatives, liberals, progressives, they look at Medicare, which is socialized medicine in its own little way, they look at that favorably. They look back at Medicaid and they go, it's too expensive. We need to adjust it. We can't expand it. Why is that? What's wrong with the brand?
Well, I think there has been some misunderstandings about what Medicare and Medicaid are about. You know, many people think that Medicaid are for folks who aren't working. They think that Medicaid is for folks who aren't willing to work, but the vast majority of people are underemployed who are on Medicaid. And we're talking about families and folks who are, who have had some sort of crisis affect them personally or in their health or in their families. And of course, Medicare is a program that has worked phenomenally well. And just ask our senior citizens. If you ask even Republican and very conservative members of our state and our country, if they want to have Medicare eliminated, they would say no. They would fight it tooth and nail because people have come to rely upon it. So I think a lot of it comes down to misunderstanding about what the program is about. They don't realize that Medicaid involves folks who are working or are trying to work.
Even at this state level, if you could influence that decision, is there a way to get conservatives on board to expand Medicaid or something like it in terms of health care without them feeling they're giving up their principles and without setting up Democrats to be painted as liberal, socialist, communist, the whole thing that we hear every election cycle? Can you thread the needle?
Well, I think we need to focus on what is truly involved here. We're talking about Medicaid. We're investing in families. We're investing in the health of families. And if we don't have the Medicaid there, there's no incentive for folks to work harder. And also, if we don't have Medicaid available, not only will you have doors closed in hospitals and in doctor's offices, but you will then see these families go either without care or they'll go to emergency rooms and all of us will pay even more. So it's a balancing act. Medicaid is a vital component of our insurance system that we have. You know, in a perfect world, everyone would have insurance coverage of some sort, but we're not in a perfect world, and we're trying to make sure that whole swaths of our people don't have dire health because of lack of access.
Do you, and speaking for the Democrats, do you trust the federal government, whether it's President Obama, President Trump, to keep their word over the long term? Say you figure it out and you get it. They're going to keep their word and not leave you with billions of dollars in Medicaid costs, if you get it.
Well, under the current law, they're responsible for 90%. And as
That's current law.
Under current law.
Future law.
But under Trump care, they want to eliminate that. So where the uncertainty is more, again, speaking as the chairman of the Democratic Party for North Carolina, and as a former state insurance commissioner, the law right now provides more protection for states and for our consumers than what Trump care is proposing. And I think that's something that people need to focus on. There are a lot of people who think that Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act are two different things.
Do Democrats believe Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, they think it works the way it ought to?
I would think anyone who's familiar with it as I am, as a former state insurance commissioner and as someone who's studied this up close, anyone who's done that and should admit that it is not perfect. There are some significant changes and amendments that need to be made. But if you're talking about repealing the entire law, you're going to have a lot of folks who are counting on that, including businesses and states, see protections for their people go away. So I think that it could use some repair, could use some revisions, but the type of proposals that are in place now hurt working families, they hurt people, they hurt North Carolinians, and that's what I care about the most.
How much of the social issues, the arguments we're seeing every single day down here, overcrowding a real discussion on economic issues, which I guess you consider health care costs an economic issue?
Sure. Well, there are so many issues that people care about, and there are issues that folks can agree on. And I think what the vast majority of North Carolinians care about is what Governor Cooper's focused on. And we're talking about jobs, talking about quality health care, talking about infrastructure improvements, talking about our public schools and helping improve the salaries for our teachers, the educators of our children and grandchildren. I believe that when you talk about those issues, that's where we have common ground. When we get into these social issues, you factor in personal beliefs, personal philosophies, religious beliefs, and there's just so many directions that you can go with that you're not going to have agreement.
Is it okay to just be, as a regular person, tired of hearing about HB2, that cut a deal down the middle and get rid of it or keep it and live with it? But at some point, does everybody walk away and just the Republicans run the state and they got veto-proof majorities?
Well, I believe, and Governor Cooper believes, that that we are seeing the Republicans obstruct what should be an easy fix. They could repeal HB 2, the whole thing, or they could do what Governor Cooper has proposed and that Democratic legislators have endorsed, is that with the proposed fix is take out the referendum component and resolve this. People are tired of it, but at the same time, we do not want to have the protections for our citizens, the rights of our citizens brought into question. And we're already seeing and have learned hundreds of millions of dollars are on the line for North Carolina in just a few years ahead. We already saw with NCAA games moved out of our state and so many other conferences and conventions, but it goes well beyond that. And people want to see our leaders lead. And we have Governor Cooper as the adult in the room. He says, well, you know what, here's willing to compromise. And I don't see compromise really coming from the other side. Let's finish this. Let's get this done.
I know you're getting me into equal time problems here. I got to have a Republican to talk about that. But in fair to that, it's been an exhaustive issue. We're reaching 1 year on House bill, at least from the time Charlotte passed its ordinance. I've had rural lawmakers tell me, you know, I hear what the urban centers are saying about losing the basketball tournament, but the basketball tournament's never going to go to northwestern North Carolina or northeastern North Carolina. And those people tell me 3-1, stick to your guns. I don't want to see HB 2 repealed. How do you handle that as a local leader answering to the diner, and then coming back to Raleigh and trying to legislate at a statewide level, at the macro level?
Right. Well, this wasn't an issue till the legislature passed that law. We've seen other states that have similar approaches to what we had in place, and then the legislature stepped in and did what it did. We haven't seen other states do that. We've even seen our lieutenant governor go to other states to try and export that to Texas, for example, last week. But fundamentally, people want us to focus on jobs, on our schools and education, on our infrastructure, on our health care, on our environment, things that matter to everybody. But this has become a social issue distraction that also is putting in jeopardy and continues to put in jeopardy the funds and the revenue that could help us with our schools and help us with our infrastructure. So as long as this issue continues to be on the radar, it is unfortunately impacting all these other things. We need folks to work and to compromise and do the things that move North Carolina forward.
Why would this, especially Senate Republicans, they're quiet on this largely. Chuck McGrady's trying to get a compromise. If he can work the details out, you may or may not take it at the end of the day. You backed off, and all the Democrats backed off that bill. But Senate comes in, drives this issue, a lot of it, and they gain a seat. They knock off one Democrat. Why should they deal if they're showing a net positive for their work?
Well, I think that was an anomaly. I think when the Democrat that was defeated in that part of the state, it was in Robeson County. You had the flooding, you had the impact of voters being out of their precincts and the like, and then some other issues that were going on with the national election. So I don't think it was HB 2 that impacted that. I think it were other issues that impacted the loss of that Senate seat. But as the chairman of the State Democratic Party, my commitment is to reconnect with rural North Carolina, focus on those issues that matter to them, matter to my family, matter to other families. We're talking about how do we put food on the table? How do we pay for our medicines? How do we make sure our kids are getting quality education by teachers who are getting paid what they are worth, and they should be paid more?
What do you say to social conservatives that maybe used to vote Democrat? I mean, there's a lot of social conservatives out there that are pro-Social Security and pro-gun and anti-abortion. How do you talk to them in an area of an urbanizing political party base?
Sure. Well, and I was in Scotland County recently, which is a neighboring county to my home county, Richmond County, where I'm from, and that issue came up, and it comes up elsewhere. And I say, look, you know, we are a diverse people. Everyone has opinions on all sorts of issues. But if you're with me, if you're with the Democrats on 80% or 85%, then stick with us on the other. You know, if you're with the Republicans on 10% or 15%, but you're getting harmed by the rest of the Republican policy initiatives, why stick with them? So I want folks to know that this is not a purity test. We're looking at who is fighting for you, who's fighting for our families, who's fighting for our kids, who's fighting for our future. And I believe when you look at the policies that have been in place and the policies that are being proposed by Democrats and Governor Cooper, that we are fighting for those families. And even if there's some disagreement, if we got 85% that are with us, then they should stick with us.
You're speaking for Governor Cooper. How did he win by 10,000 votes? Was it HB 2? Was it I-77? I've heard both.
Well, there will
Or
be
10,000 more votes than the other guy?
Well, as you know, in politics, you just need one more vote than the other fellow that's running. And there were so many issues in play last election cycle, whether it was the presidential race, whether again we had the hurricane that hit, I-77, HB2. Clearly, a lot of folks were not in former Governor McCrory's camp. It is difficult to unseat a sitting governor, so clearly there were voters who were disenchanted and did not believe in what he described as the Carolina comeback. There are a lot of communities that have not seen a comeback at all. So I believe Governor Cooper worked hard. He pounded the pavement. He wore out shoe leather. He went to communities across the state, and whether it was by 10,000 votes or if it had been by 1,000,000 votes or one vote, he still won, and he is our governor. And we need to get behind him and work for the betterment of our state.
Well, we've got some big issues coming up in the legislature. A lot of it on tax policy coming out. The Senate wants to give state voters the decision on whether to lower the constitutional maximum income tax rate from 10% to 5.5%. Your thoughts?
Well, this has been tried before, and of course, the Republicans, whether in Washington or in Raleigh, appear to have never met a tax cut that they didn't like. And when you talk about, setting in the Constitution what the cap is, there's a cap there already. The cap has not been met, as I understand it. So what is at play here with this proposal is that it could hobble future legislatures whenever we have an economic downturn. What do you do then if you don't have enough revenue coming in for our schools or for our infrastructure or for our people? If the Constitution is capped way too low, then we have not been in there, but other states have.
You raise sales taxes. That's what you do. And Democrats have raised sales taxes before.
To some degree, but in states that have relied almost solely upon sales taxes, their economies have taken a huge hit. Kansas, for example, and other states that have gone down this road, and it has not fared well for their public schools, it's not fared well for their taxpayers.
What kind of climate are we in right now, business-wise, in this state?
Well, we have regularly been described and rated as a very good state for business, and that's something which has taken hard work by both Democrats and Republicans. I do believe, though, that businesses that are looking at our state, they know that it is better for them if we have a state that invests as much as possible in its schools and its infrastructure, and in the quality of life measures that matter to those businesses as they expand. When they start seeing negative impacts on those things, from what I've seen and from what I know, it causes them to falter as to whether they will come here. We are a great state for business, but Governor Cooper's having to do a lot of work to make up for the tarnish that the Republicans have put on our state.
Tax rates, we're looking at the small tax cut. Not small, it's $1 billion. They're calling it middle class, with lower corporate rates and personal rates slightly, independent from this cap. Can you get behind either one of those?
Well, if tax cuts are truly targeted for our middle class, for our working folks, that's one thing. But if you see a disproportionate impact on the wealthy and who wind up getting more savings, more relief than those who truly need it, then you have to question how it's constructed. So I think that as the chairman of the Democratic Party and working side by side with Governor Cooper and with our Democratic legislators, we want to make sure that the folks who truly need the tax relief are the ones getting it. Should billionaires and folks who have hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars be the ones that benefit from it? I think that regular North Carolinians, average folks like you and me and others, should be the folks that benefit from any tax relief.
It's a flattened income tax rate versus a progressive, right? And we're back to an old argument from since God knows when.
This goes back a century.
What is the sentiment on that? People like the idea of a flat tax. A lot of people do, especially people that pay taxes. But they also hear what you guys say on the other side, and they also vote for you too. So what's been the confusion on tax policy?
Well, tax policy is confusing because a lot of times there's more written about tax policy than what is enacted as tax policy. It seems like every election year, or every year for that matter, that folks talk about cutting taxes left, right, and center and everything. But we need to look at what actually happens. And when we had tax cuts that were proposed and enacted under former Governor McCrory, and you had people who had not paid taxes before, seeing their taxes go up, and being middle class and lower middle class, but folks who were upper middle and higher class having significant relief, there's some problems there. When relief is promised, it should go to where it's needed the most.
Well, the only way you change policy is you change the fortunes of the legislature for Democrats.
That's right. And that's my job is recruiting candidates.
Where are you finding the next generation that can peel off Republicans? You got to beat Republicans.
We have, as I understand it, the largest voting bloc that's emerging right now, the millennials. Now, I'm part of the Generation X, and then you got the baby boomers before that. But we have a tremendous block of young and new voters who are questioning everything, and they're getting their information from technology that we don't all understand, but they are questioning everything, and that's where we're going to see our next round of candidates come from. People who I believe are not tied to the old systems, but are looking for something new and different. And I believe that the state Democratic Party, through its retooling process, by reconnecting with voters, and by what these new voters are seeing happen on the national level, where they just can't believe, literally, what's being said, I think you're going to see some new faces emerge in just a few short years.
Wayne Goodwin, NC Democratic Party Chairman. Folks, we'll be seeing a whole lot of you over the next years. And congratulations on the new job.
Thank you.
Wish you luck on it. We've covered you as insurance commissioner's legislator. And thank you folks for watching this week's Common Ground. We'll see you next week. North Carolina Channel is made possible by the financial contributions of viewers like you who support the UNC TV network.